The air in Louisville's Eastwood neighborhood carried the faint hum of evening, lawnmowers quieted, streetlights flickering on, the kind of place where neighbors nodded out of habit but rarely lingered for conversation. Terrence Boyd pulled his dusty gray Honda CR-V into the driveway at 6:37 p.m., the weight of a 12-hour shift at U of L Health pressing into his bones. His pale blue scrubs clung to him, slightly wrinkled, his hospital ID badge still clipped to his chest. He was a respiratory therapist, the kind of man who spent his days coaxing breath into fragile lungs, unnoticed by most of the city he served. His only thought was kissing his 2-year-old daughter, Myla, good night, and maybe fixing the chipped green paint on the front door that his wife, Kayla, had been nudging him about for months. He stepped onto the porch, lunch bag in one hand, keys in the other. The motion sensor light blinked on, then came the sound, a low, urgent whoop of sirens, sharp and close. Terrence turned, squinting into the dusk. 2 Louisville Metro patrol cars screeched to a stop in front of his house, their beams slicing across the garage and front yard. His stomach tightened, but he stayed still, keys dangling. An officer, stocky and light-skinned, mid-40s, leapt from the first cruiser before it fully stopped. "You, hands where I can see them," he barked. Terrence froze, confusion washing over him. "What?" he said, voice steady but thin. He raised his hands slowly, the ID badge swinging against his chest. "This is my house. I live here." The second officer, younger, mid-30s, shaved head and a jaw like a clenched fist, jogged up, already pulling cuffs from his belt. "Turn around. Don't make this harder than it has to be." Wait," Terrence said, hands still up. "This is a mistake. My wife and daughter are inside. Look, my wall. It's in my bag." He didn't finish. The older officer grabbed his left wrist, yanking it down and twisting it behind his back in one motion. The younger one snapped the cuffs on, the metal biting into his skin. "What's going on?" Terrence asked, still processing. "I work at the hospital. I just got off my shift. We got a call about a suspicious person on the porch. Possible breaking. You match the description." The younger officer said, his tone flat, like he was reading a script. "I am the person on the porch," Terrence said, almost laughing at the absurdity. "I live here." The words landed like stones in water, rippling but changing nothing. The older officer pushed him toward the cruiser, his grip firm, impatient. Across the street, a garage door creaked open halfway, a shadow peeking out before it slid shut again. No one stepped outside. No one said a word. Then headlights cut through the scene. A white Nissan Altima pulled up, and Kayla Boyd stepped out, her cardigan slipping off one shoulder, leggings stretched from a long day. Her face shifted from curiosity to panic in a heartbeat. "What is happening?" she shouted, slamming her car door. Myla's cries spilled from the back seat, sharp and piercing. Kayla ran toward the officers. "That's my husband. What are you doing?" "Ma'am, step back," the older officer said, his hand raised like a wall. "No, he lives here. We live here." Kayla's voice cracked, her phone already out, recording. Terrence, now leaning against the cruiser with his hands cuffed, tried to turn his head. "Kayla, call my brother. Get someone on the phone." "Sir, are you resisting?" the younger officer snapped. "I'm not resisting," Terrence said, clear and deliberate. "I'm telling you I live here. Check the name on the mailbox. Boyd, look at the mail. My name's on every envelope." The officers ignored him. Kayla's voice rose, trembling but fierce. "You're arresting a man for trying to walk into his own home." Myla's sobs grew louder, filling the night. Neighbors' curtains twitched, but no one came out. One officer muttered into his radio about trespassing and possible resistance, and Terrence was shoved into the back of the cruiser, the door slamming shut. Kayla followed the patrol car down the street, still filming, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. She'd already called her sister, a lawyer friend, and their pastor. At the precinct, they took Terrence's fingerprints and charged him, trespassing, resisting arrest. He asked to speak to someone who could verify his address, but they told him to sit tight. A younger officer scoffed when Terrence mentioned the Ring camera footage from his porch. "You really think that matters?" he muttered. Kayla arrived at the station after dark, Myla finally asleep in the car. The clerk at the desk barely looked up. "Ma'am, if he's been booked, he'll be processed. Wait or call in the morning." "He was arrested for standing on our porch," Kayla snapped. The clerk shrugged. "If he resisted, that's between him and the officers." Kayla wanted to scream, but she stepped outside, sat on the curb, and called their neighbor Janice, one of the few in the subdivision who'd ever bothered to talk to them. "What?" Janice said, stunned. "I just saw Terrence mowing the lawn on Sunday. Do you know who might have called it in?" There was a pause. Then, softly, "I mean this place. Someone probably thought he didn't belong. It wasn't the first time. 6 months earlier, someone had reported Terrence jogging near the high school, asking if he was following the kids. That time, the officers left after seeing his hospital badge. But this wasn't a question. This was cuffs, charges, mugshots. Inside the holding cell, Terrence sat on a cold bench under buzzing fluorescent lights, still in his scrubs, shoelaces and belt confiscated. The cuffs had left red marks on his wrists, and his back ached from the rough shove into the car. The officer, who fingerprinted him, didn't meet his eyes. He asked for a phone call. Hours later, they handed him a line. Kayla answered on the second ring. "Baby, I've got the lawyer. She's on it." Terrence exhaled. "I didn't even touch them, Kay. I didn't yell, nothing. I know. We've got the doorbell footage. Elise says we're gonna be fine." He stayed quiet for a moment. "They didn't care, Kay. That's what scares me." Back at home, Elise Brogan, a sharp-tongued civil rights attorney, reviewed the Ring footage Kayla had uploaded. The camera, positioned above the porch light, captured everything in Y. Dangle hide, F. Terrence walking up with his bag, unlocking the door, the patrol cars pulling in, the confrontation, the cuffs, Kayla's arrival, Myla's cries. No raised voice, no resistance. Just a man coming home after a shift, and a system ready to box him in without question. Elise shook her head. "We're going to court," she said. "And I hope they're stupid enough not to drop the charges before we get there." The next morning, Terrence was released on bond. No apology, no acknowledgement of the mistake. At work, things weren't much better. His supervisor called. "Terrence, we saw the video. You've been placed on administrative leave until further notice. Standard procedure." "But I didn't." I know, just. HR has to do its thing." Terrence hung up and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the coffee pot without turning it on. Kayla was in the living room, watching Myla drag her toy elephant across the floor. She wanted to say something comforting, but words felt too fragile. Terrence broke the silence. "I've done everything right, Kay. I bought this house, I pay my taxes, I wear a badge to save people, and they still cuffed me like I was nothing." "You're not nothing," she said softly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Then why do they look at me like I didn't deserve to be there?" "I don't know," she said, "but we're not going to let them get away with it." They spent the day contacting community leaders, pastors, and a local reporter who'd once done a feature on black healthcare workers during the pandemic. Within hours, a ripple began. Tweets, a neighborhood Facebook post, a mention on a local news blog. Elise emailed the DA office, refusing to settle or accept a quiet dismissal. "We're not here to walk away," she told them. "We're here to expose the rot." But the courtroom would reveal more than they expected, and Judge Martin Greer's reaction would shift the ground beneath them all. The courtroom was packed that Friday morning, tighter than usual for a case about trespassing. Word had spread like wildfire. Neighbors, off-duty hospital workers, and local activists slipped in early, filling the back wall. Cameras weren't allowed, but whispers buzzed through the room, glances darting, waiting for something to break open. Terrence sat at the defense table between Kayla and Elise, hands folded, wearing a light blue button-up. No scrubs, no hospital ID. Just a man accused of standing on his own porch. Judge Martin Greer, old school and conservative, had a reputation for clipped words and no patience for theatrics. He'd seen everything from bar brawls to wire fraud, but this case was different. It wasn't loud or chaotic. It was about a man, a porch, and what people thought they saw. Commonwealth versus Terrence Boyd. The clerk called out. Terrence stood. Elise stood. The prosecutor, Paul Ridgely, a thin man with a sharp nose, barely glanced up from his file. "Your Honor." Ridgely began, "The state believes there's probable cause to pursue charges of criminal trespassing and resisting arrest. Mr. Boyd was found on his property." Elise cut in, calm but direct. Greer raised a hand. "Miss Brogan, let him finish." Elise nodded slightly, crossing her arms. Ridgely continued. "At the time of the incident, officers received a call reporting an attempted break-in. Upon arrival, they encountered Mr. Boyd on the porch. He did not comply immediately with commands." "That's not true," Terrence muttered. Elise touched his arm, whispering, "Let me handle it." Greer peered over his glasses. "Miss Brogan, Your Honor, we have footage. Clear, uninterrupted footage from a ring camera on Mr. Boyd's home. The incident was captured from start to finish. I believe it will clarify what happened. Proceed." Greer said. A court technician wheeled out a monitor and plugged in a thumb drive. The room went still, even Ridgely leaning in slightly. The footage played. No music, no editing, just raw life. Terrence pulling into the driveway, walking to the door in scrubs, unlocking it. The patrol cars screeching in, officers shouting, cuffs clicking, Kayla arriving, her voice trembling, Milo wailing. The courtroom flinched when Kayla shouted, "That's my husband," and an officer replied, "Ma'am, step back or you'll be detained." Ridgely shifted in his seat. When the video ended, silence hung heavy. Greer sat back, fingers interlaced, eyes moving between Terrence, the officers, and the screen. Elise stood. "Your Honor, Mr. Boyd presented no threat. He explained himself, remained calm, and his wife verified his identity. The officers never checked his ID, the mailbox, or the house number. They assumed, and escalated. For what? Because he fit a description. Because he was in scrubs. Is the neighbor who called present today?" Greer asked. "No, Your Honor." Ridgely replied. They declined to testify. Elise smirked. "Convenient." Greer turned to the bailiff. "Get me the names of the responding officers, on record." The officers, Nolan Rusk and Matthew Greeley, stiffened as their names were read aloud. "Officer Rusk," Greer said, "did you verify ownership before initiating arrest?" "No, sir," Rusk said. The call sounded urgent. "We were told someone was trying to break in." Greer, nodded slowly, then turned to Greeley. "Did Mr. Boyd present a weapon, make any threatening move?" "No, Your Honor." "Did he raise his voice?" "No, Your Honor." Greer flipped a page in the case file, then looked at the frozen footage. Terrence mid-arrest, head turned toward Kayla's headlights. "There's no law against standing on your own porch," he said. "And there's no law against being a homeowner in scrubs." He paused, voice firming. "But I want to know what kind of law lets you ignore a man's name, his keys, his wife, and still put him in handcuffs?" Before anyone could respond, Greer called a recess. The courtroom buzzed with tension, but no one left. The footage had peeled back something raw, something no one wanted to name aloud. Terrence sat still, hands clasped. Elise leaned in. "You okay?" He nodded, then shrugged. "It's strange. I've watched that video 100 times, but hearing it here, it hits different." Kayla rubbed his back. "You were calm. You were respectful. Anyone watching can see it." He glanced at the officers, who avoided his eyes. His mind drifted to the holding cell. Cold steel, buzzing lights, 2 other men inside. One snored, the other, older with a cut lip, stared at the floor. Terrence had asked for water. The guard didn't answer. Hours later, another tossed him a blanket without a word. That silence, more than the cuffs, stuck with him. It was like being erased. The bailiff called, "All rise." Greer re-entered, face unreadable. "This isn't just about Mr. Boyd," he said, clearing his throat. "It's about how easy it was to look at a man in his own yard, keys in the door, and not ask a single question before cuffing him." He fixed his gaze on Rusk. "I've presided over this bench for 16 years. I've heard every excuse for misjudgment, but this wasn't foggy or chaotic. This was a clean porch, a man in scrubs, and 2 officers who refused to do the bare minimum." He turned to Greeley. "I don't care what the dispatcher said. You had a man on scene, a mailbox, a woman confirming his identity, and a screaming child watching her father stuffed into a car. The room stayed silent. I'm not here to make speeches." Greer continued, "But when a mistake happens, it should be acknowledged, not buried under paperwork." He looked at Terrence. "Mr. Boyd, these charges are dismissed immediately and without condition. You are free to go." A collective exhale filled the room, but Greer wasn't done. "I'm referring this case to the Civilian Review Board. The conduct of these officers deserves scrutiny beyond this courtroom, and I expect the department to answer for it." Ridgely shifted but said nothing. Elise stood. "Thank you, Your Honor. We also intend to file a motion regarding damages, lost income, public humiliation, and harm to Mr. Boyd's professional reputation." "Noted," Greer said. "You're well within your rights." As court adjourned, Kayla tugged Terrence's sleeve. "Come on, let's go home." Outside, reporters waited, but Elise spoke first. Terrence took a deep breath and stepped to the microphones. "I just wanted to go home that day," he said. "I didn't yell, I didn't fight. I was tired from work, and the next thing I know, I'm in a cage because someone didn't think I belonged." He paused. "I hope no one else has to explain themselves like that for just existing. I work in this city, I help people breathe, and I was almost crushed over nothing." Kayla held his hand. Reporters pressed, but Elise took over, promising a civil action. Terrence said no more. That night, he tucked Myla into bed. She didn't ask about the police or the shouting, just wanted her bedtime story. He read her favorite picture book, her small voice mouthing the words she knew by heart. For the first time in days, he slept through the night, but outside the courtroom, the story was far from over. Monday morning brought a storm no forecast predicted, not rain, but a deluge of emails, voicemails, and interview requests. By Friday night, Terrence's story had hit local news. By Saturday, it was trending online. By Sunday, CNN wanted a sit-down. But in courtroom 2B, it wasn't about headlines. It was about a man who nearly lost everything over 5 minutes on his porch. Elise returned to court that morning, not for charges. They'd been dropped, but to file a misconduct declaration against officers Rusk and Greeley. It wasn't symbolic. It could trigger disciplinary action if the Civilian Review Board acted. Greer was back on the bench, flipping papers with steady rhythm. Terrence sat beside Elise in a charcoal suit, no tie, jaw tight, not from nerves, but from holding back. "I'd like to present additional documentation," Elise said, handing over a folder. "Affidavits from neighbors who witnessed the arrest and the original 911 transcript. The neighbor, Mrs. Annabelle Dunning, stated she didn't recognize the man on the porch and got scared. That was the full basis for the call. Not criminal behavior, not a threat, just unfamiliarity." She pulled out a still from the ring footage. "This is Mr. Boyd in scrubs, unlocking his door. Not breaking in, not loitering, just coming home." The silence wasn't quiet. It was heavy, loud. Greer flipped a page. "And the resisting arrest charge dropped," Elise said. "Body cam footage confirms no resistance. Mr. Boyd was calm, cooperative, and repeatedly stated his address. The officers didn't listen. Greer didn't nod, just said, 'I see.'" Elise closed the folder. "We're asking this court to forward the misconduct declaration to the Louisville Metro Police Department, the Civilian Review Board, and include it in public record." Greer turned to Ridgely. "Does the state object?" "No objection, Your Honor," Ridgely said, voice tight. "So ordered," Greer said, tapping his pen. He looked at Terrence. "Mr. Boyd, I know people have reached out, press, officials, maybe politicians. You don't owe anyone anything. You've handled yourself with grace. This court thanks you for your patience. I wish more people understood what restraint looks like." Terrence stood. "Thank you, Your Honor." Greer stopped him. "One more thing. You still working at the hospital?" "I've been on leave since the arrest," Terrence said. Greer raised his eyebrows. "That's unfortunate. Maybe they'll watch this footage too." Outside, Elise gave a brief statement. "Our client was humiliated, targeted, and arrested on his own porch. Today's motion ensures the officers will be investigated, and this won't be swept under the rug." Reporters pressed, would Terrence sue? Would charges be filed against the officers? Elise waved them off. "You'll have our statement soon." Terrence stayed silent. In the courthouse parking lot, he stopped. "You think this changes anything?" he asked Elise. She looked at him carefully. "Not everything, maybe something." He nodded, glancing at Kayla and Mila waving from the car. "I just want to go back to normal." "Normal," Elise said. "That's the word, huh?" He smiled faintly. "Yeah, normal sounds good." But online, normal was slipping away. By Tuesday, Terrence's name was everywhere. A news clip on TikTok, Reddit, Instagram. The ring footage, released with his consent, was dissected, memed, stitched with hashtags like #PorchArrest and #WrongMan. Some called him a hero. Others said he overreacted or must have done something off camera. Kayla read the comments, shielding him from the worst, her face tightening after scrolling. That night, on the back patio, the baby monitor humming, Terrence admitted, "I thought it'd be over once the charges dropped." Kayla handed him water. "You were humiliated in front of Mila. The only reason this got attention is that camera." He nodded. If I didn't have that footage, they'd still say I resisted, that I was aggressive, that I fit some description. You didn't, and we have proof. But what about everyone who doesn't? They sat in silence. The next day, at a local cafe, the barista did a double take. "You're that dude from the video, right?" "Yeah," Terrence said tightly. "Yo, that was wild. Glad you're okay." "Thanks." He grabbed his coffee, but whispers followed. "That's him, the guy who got arrested." Every eye felt aimed at him. He locked his car doors and drove home, handing Kayla her iced tea without a word. "They all know me now," he said, staring at the blank TV, "not because of my work, but because I got arrested on my porch." "Maybe it's happening for a reason," Kayla said. "What reason?" "To show people what it looks like when someone who did nothing wrong ends up in cuffs." Later that week, Elise called. "The officers are under internal review. I've filed the civil claim, but the department's union is pushing back, framing this as a miscommunication, a tense situation." "Let them try," Terrence said. He kept replaying the moment, standing on his porch, hearing "turn around, hands behind your back." No one asked his name, just orders. He watched the footage again, not for the images, but for the sounds. Mila's cries, Kayla's cracking voice. It wasn't about being seen, it was about being heard. Then Annabelle Dunning, the neighbor who made the call, came forward with a letter that changed everything. She didn't go on camera or release a statement, but her son delivered a typed, single-spaced page to the courthouse. Elise read it aloud in her office, Terrence and Kayla listening. "I've lived across from the Boyds for 7 years. I knew who Terrence was. I called because I was angry. 2 weeks earlier, my son was cited for reckless driving, and Terrence gave a witness statement. I didn't think much of it then, but I became bitter. When I saw him on the porch, I knew who he was. I just didn't care." Terrence sat back, stunned. "She lied," he said flatly. "She didn't even lie well." Elise said. Kayla, in the doorway, shook her head. She knew Mila was in that house. By the following Monday, the court held an emergency session. Not a trial, but a statement. Greer took the bench. On March 12th, a call was made, not out of fear, but spite. That call led to an arrest based on false pretense affecting Mr. Boyd, his wife, his child, and his livelihood. He looked at Rusk and Greeley in plain clothes. "You are responsible for your choices. That woman misled you, but you failed to verify, to ask, to pause. You imagined a crime and acted." He turned to Terrence. "Mr. Boyd, I said you handled yourself with grace. I still believe that, but grace doesn't mean silence or surrender." He stood. "I'm forwarding this court's findings and the neighbor's statement to the Civilian Review Board, the City Ethics Commission, and the State Bar. I'm requesting the Department of Justice review local arrest procedures. This cannot happen again." Greer stepped down and did something unexpected. He offered Terrence his hand. "I don't have the power to make it right," he said, "but I can make sure it's seen." Outside, reporters shouted. Terrence raised his hand. "I didn't ask for this attention, but since I'm here, I'll say this. Everyone deserves to come home without being treated like a stranger. If one neighbor's bitterness can cause this harm, imagine what accountability can do." But the story didn't end there. The Louisville Metro Police Department cracked open, unable to hide. Emails flooded the Civilian Review Board, hundreds from locals, thousands nationwide. A petition for disciplinary action against Rusk and Greeley hit 60,000 signatures in days. The leaked 911 audio, calm, deliberate, no mention of danger, placed a target on Terrence's back. Elise played it for them in their living room. She said she didn't recognize me. Terrence muttered, "She's seen me for years." "She didn't care," Kayla said. News vans camped out. Terrence stayed quiet, meeting Elise twice weekly for the civil suit against the officers, the city, and Dunning. "This isn't about money," Elise said. "It's about precedent. We're still gonna live here," Terrence said. "I'll see her windows every day." "You won't have to," Kayla replied. "I've been looking at listings. You want to move. I want peace." Officer Rusk hired a PR firm, releasing a vague statement about poor communication. It backfired. Greeley stayed silent. The police chief announced an internal affairs investigation and paid leave for the officers, sparking outrage online. Elise, on news panels, didn't hold back. They got a vacation. My client got trauma. Terrence changed quietly. He stopped jogging, scanned every car near his driveway, slept fitfully. One night, Kayla asked, "Do you regret putting the video out?" "No," he said after a long pause, "but I hate that it had to be me." "Maybe it had to be somebody," she said. "Somebody with a camera shouldn't be the only way to be believed." A knock came that Thursday, a soft, unsure tap. Kayla opened the door to Miriam Dunning, Annabelle's sister, mid-50s, clutching her purse. "Annabelle asked me to come," Miriam said. "She's not well, shaken up. She doesn't want to face anyone." "Shaken up?" Terrence asked, stepping forward. "She didn't send me to defend her. I told her what she did was reckless, spiteful. But there's something you should know, not public. Annabelle called the cops because she thought it would get attention. She figured she could step in as the concerned neighbor for sympathy. She didn't mean for it to go this far, but when she saw the footage, she panicked. That's why she wrote the letter. She thought putting me in danger would help her." Terrence said, "She's not in her right mind. Dangry, bitter, lonely. She watched me get dragged away in front of my family and kept quiet until the video forced her to speak." "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Miriam said. "Just thought you should know who you're dealing with." He nodded. "Now I do." That night, Elise called. "The city's offering a settlement $600 €0, half upfront, half over 2 years. But there's a gag order. No interviews, no suit, no comment." "If I take it, I'm done," Terrence said. "Pretty much. If you don't, we fight publicly. Could take years, might end in nothing, or force policy changes." Kayla didn't hesitate. "If we stay quiet, they win." Elise countered the offer. No gag order, full payout, written apology. The city declined. The lawsuit was filed that evening. Emails poured in, not from strangers, but from others with similar stories. Black men stopped outside their homes. Women pulled over in their neighborhoods. Teens mistaken for threats. Terrence read everyone, saving them. "I thought I was the exception," he told Kayla. "Like if I was calm, polite, educated, it wouldn't happen, but it did." "You're not the exception," she said. "You're one more." But his story sparked something unstoppable. The Louisville Metro Council introduced the Boyd Amendment, requiring officers to verify property ownership before trespassing arrests unless there's a visible threat. Anonymous call arrests needed supervisor review. Similar stories surfaced nationwide, families with their own footage, some worse. Terrence returned to work part-time, his co-workers seeing him differently, not with pity, but recognition. At home, Mila asked, pointing at the door, "Is that where the police got mad at Daddy?" "Yeah, baby," he said softly. "That's where it happened." "Did you yell?" "No, I didn't yell." She nodded and went back to her toys. The lawsuit pushed forward. Elise wanted acknowledgement, not just money. Language to make it harder for officers to act without thinking. Terrence started writing letters to the police academy, city council, review board, asking for reforms, training, community input. Some responded, some didn't, but the writing gave him direction. Annabelle Dunning sold her house quietly, a moving truck and realtor sign appearing one morning. A young interracial couple moved in. Kayla whispered, "That's ironic." Terrence just smiled. Months later, the city offered a meeting. No cameras, no conditions. In a private room at City Hall, they presented a folded letter, an official apology, signed, acknowledging wrongdoing, promising new procedural checks. Terrence took it, framed it in his home office, not a trophy, but proof the truth didn't vanish. That night, on his porch, Myla asleep, Kayla inside, he looked across the neighborhood. Same houses, same sidewalks, but something had shifted. Not enough, but something. He wasn't explaining himself, wasn't performing calmness to feel safe. He was home.
If you liked this story, please like, subscribe, and share it with others so they can learn something from it too.